Good morning, America. I'm Charles Gibson.
I'm Diane Sawyer, and it's Tuesday, September.
When people ask about the genre of Vaporwave and what it truly represents, one particular album comes to my mind long before any other. A phenomenal set of tracks, a tragic story, and a minefield of hidden meaning and analogies. This is an album that led to many interpretations and a sinking feeling that's extremely hard to replicate through music. This is News at 11.
Want more weather information?
Let me start off with a bit of backstory. Since the beginning of 2021, I've had the idea of doing a video around this specific album right here. Various other YouTubers have covered this topic before, such as Chennington, who, now that I think about it, has actually done a few videos about this album. They're very awesome. Definitely check them out. I was always scared of doing this though, as the topic itself can be extremely touchy for some, but after a while of thinking, I finally decided, let's do it. I hit up the creator, Jornt, for permission to make a video on this album. I had to ask multiple people in the Shroud Discord server to make sure I was saying his name right. I think I did well though. A few hours later, I actually got a very nice email back from him giving me the green light to produce this video. Thanks a bunch. That means a lot to me. And now, after all these months, we're finally here. Now I gotta do this video about an album based around 9/11. Jesus Christ, this is a touchy subject. How would I be able to pull this off without being insensitive? Let's talk about this. News at 11 is no doubt one of the most, Vaporwave. Let's start there. Some of you may be familiar with what Vaporwave, the genre of this album, actually is, but for those who don't, listen up. Vaporwave is a microgenre of music that arguably fully started around 2010 or so that has a focus on bringing you a feeling of longing, usually done in a very in-your-face manner. This is the type of music to make you go, oh, I don't feel so good on one hand, and man, today sucks. I'm gonna go back to the 1980s on the other hand. Fire up that crack epidemic, Reagan, because I'm coming back! Now, while some people, like my good friend Mars, who also helped me with the script, find most Vaporwave to be a questionable choice in music, the album I'm about to talk about in this video has so much more than meets the ear. Even Mars liked it. Something commonly found within Vaporwave are these recurring dark undertones that help push the notions found both within the songs themselves as well as the genre as a whole. This would include ideas such as hypercapitalism, skewed ideas of nostalgia, and this may seem weird, but events of tragedy and loss. The other half of Vaporwave is just like shitposting and memes, but I'm not going to talk about that. Artists would beautifully put these themes in pieces that would sample other genres such as jazz, lounge, and elevator music, then chop it up, slow it down, give it a metric ton of reverb, and then release them back out for us to enjoy. When listening to Vaporwave, you don't listen to it like a normal song. You listen to it as if you're being told a story through a song. You can't touch music, but music can touch you. This is where News at 11 comes in. Among all the albums I've listened to in this genre that have that specific dark focus and tone that I mentioned earlier, News at 11 is the one that hits me right in the heart. News at 11 was released on September 11th, 2016, and the focus of the album revolves around the events that happened 15 years prior to its release. This, of course, was when the Twin Towers were tragically brought down and nearly 3,000 lives were lost. There's no jokes to be made here. This was a horrible event, and while I may poke fun at other things in my videos, the event of 9/11 isn't going to be one of them. Believe it or not, this album has actually been subject to a lot of discourse and disagreements as to what the true meaning behind it is. There's so many people with threads on Reddit and discussions on Discord coming up with their own interpretations on what they think this album actually represents. No matter what, American patriotism is a theme that's seen throughout the entire album. No doubt about it. But what if I told you there was actually darkness hidden under that patriotism? That makes no sense. No, I know, just hear me out. Among all the interpretations that people have had about this album, and there's definitely some weird ones out there, there's two specific ones that stick out to me the most that I want to talk about. Number one, in the alternate universe that this album takes place, 9/11 was being hidden from the American people outside of New York. And number two, in another alternate universe, what if 9/11 never happened in the first place? Sounds crazy, right? But what if I told you that there was a bunch of evidence to help support these messages? I'm going to take you guys through these two interpretations and along the way explain to you all why this album deserves all the praise it gets and more. And what better way to start an album than the beginning? Right away, within the first seconds of the first song, this album already lets you know, hey, you might want to buckle up because I'm about to drop some symbolism. I know I started the video off with the first song, Good Morning America, but I want you to listen again.
Good morning, America. I'm Charles Gibson.
I'm Diane Sawyer, and it's Tuesday, September.
Right there, you saw that? Right there. Look, let me lay this out for you. One of this album's biggest defining features is that every single news broadcast, and advert, and commercial was footage that was taken directly from September 11th, 2001, the actual day that the tragedy happened. As you'll quickly start to notice the more you go through the album, at the first hint of a disruption or disturbance, the adverts seem to silence the news reports, reverting back to the relaxing music to take you away from whatever may have, hypothetically, happened. Obviously, if you're an outsider listening in this alternate universe, you would have no clue what's going on. We, unfortunately, do. You could see this happen again in other songs throughout the album. Examples of this being Morning Commute, Evening Traffic, and Financial News. Quick thing about Financial News. The McDonald's commercial that plays on that song is actually the commercial that aired on one of the news stations right before one of the planes went into the tower. The way that the footage always cuts out as if done on purpose is very symbolic of the way that American media coverage is influenced in our day-to-day lives. That concept perfectly replicated here. Adverts to make our minds race and our pockets sing are thrown left and right in our faces. As you're listening to this, you have to process it as if you're a native New Yorker. And what New Yorker doesn't know about the excess of corporate advertisements? I gotta give you all credit, by the way. For someone who's based in the Netherlands, he did a fantastic job at capturing the New York heart. It goes even further than just basic advertisement though. Obviously, with News at 11, there's a huge emphasis on American patriotism. That's cool and all, but if you're looking at it through the lenses of Vaporwave, then something is obviously up. This is because Vaporwave was made in direct parallel critique of the death of small-town America and the turn of extreme consumerism in the early 1980s, while also actively indulging in such practices. The more you listen to Vaporwave, the more you'll realize how backwards some of its core values are. Remember what I said before. This would include ideas such as hypercapitalism. We don't need to worry about the other stuff right now because I want to look at hypercapitalism. Hypercapitalism is the continuous increase in speed and efficiency of production with commercialized goods. And what's America without capitalism? As the viewer knows, something is obviously wrong. The news broadcasts keep getting interrupted by music, and the music keeps getting interrupted by adverts. This, right here, is modern day America down to a T. This album is such a perfect depiction of hypercapitalism. If things go bad, America won't make a profit. They need to hide it from us as a means of getting a paycheck, no matter what the cost and what the toll. The paradise that we've been trying to build is also our hell. What if 9/11 never actually happened? What if the less scary world that everyone from the older days always speaks about never stopped being less scary to begin with? Ask almost any American that can clearly remember the 1990s what it was like. Chances are, they'll all say around the same thing. Hey mom, you remember the 90s. What would you say the world was like as a New Yorker before 9/11? Thanks. One of Vaporwave's biggest problems is that it has the cemented ideology of nothing bad can ever happen to me. Life is perfect. The 90s never stopped. I will simply buy what I want and live in ignorance as ignorance is bliss. Everything is okay. To many people, this album is just another example of that. To many people, the 90s never truly stopped until 9/11. That's when we were forced into the future, into the hypersecurity, aggravated, rigid-ended corporate world that we were left with, where every move is monitored, cars look like they're out of science fiction movies, and advertisements are more obnoxious than ever. The A side of this album is much more connected with the first interpretation, where this tragedy was trying to be hidden. The second interpretation, though, falls much more in line with the B side of this album, which, and this blew my mind by the way, the A side of this album has 9 tracks, and the B side has 11 tracks. The B side is entirely focused on songs titled The Weather Channel, and it fits perfectly with what I mentioned before. In this alternate universe, the towers are still standing and the 90s kept moving along. It uses its relaxing melodies of jazz and lounge music to fill in any silence. As far as we're concerned, this was just another news day, as if you were channel surfing on your old box TV trying to figure out what was going on in the world. And what we wish was the truth Nothing was going on. September 11th, 2001 was just like any other clear skied day. Us New Yorkers kept hustling and life was good. We were all struggling, yeah, but man, we were good. More than likely, this is the narrative that most people fit this album into. News at 11 is an example of Vaporwave in its purest form, where it's given to us in a neat little bow in a way that's easy for us to digest. But all that being said, what was Cat Corp's reasoning behind making this album? You're gonna hate me for this one. There is no canon meaning. Well, kind of. Dude, I'm keeping it a buck. I did a ton of searching when it came to finding the true intentions of this album, but I found nothing set in stone. That's when it was brought to my attention that Corp himself put a message inside the J card of the News at 11 cassette. Big shout out to my boy DrDuctape for this one. Without him sending me a picture of it, I wouldn't have known this existed in the first place. He runs a pretty banging Vaporwave label called Skyline Tapes. Definitely check it out. Link is in the video description. Anyway, upon reading the message, this is what it translates to. Did you know that News at 11 was originally made to be a soundtrack for driving to work in the morning? I made a 9-hour Weather Channel MP3 file for my iPod Nano and listened to it while driving to work or picking up my girlfriend from the airport, and I would write down the timestamp of a track that felt good and wasn't used before. I took the concept further and created this album as a tribute, a memory to this day, the end of an era. The music and communication with ancient news clips and commercials transports you right back to 2001. Looking at all the YouTube comments, messages you sent me, and the Bandcamp listeners, we have not and will never forget about what happened that day. I like to think there's a parallel universe where it never happened, where they still proudly stand tall. Signed, Cat System Core. So that's it then, isn't it? While it doesn't seem like a lot can be taken out of this message, albeit it was very nice of him to include it in the first place, there's one specific point that I want to talk about. I like to think there's a parallel universe where it never happened, where they still proudly stand tall. Well, he said it right there. Case closed, right? Kind of, and kind of not as well. While it does reference that universe I was talking about where the towers still stand tall, it wasn't necessarily set in stone that, yes, this is what the album means, as much as it was, I hope this universe does exist. That being said, all we could do is keep wondering and keep listening. With the 20th anniversary of 9/11 having recently passed, I figured now would be a better time than ever to make a video on this. I'd like to, again, give Jornt a major thank you for giving me the green light to do this video in the first place, as well as everyone who was involved in the production of it. Without you guys, this video would not exist. And America, have a good night.